Hi, and welcome to season 5, episode 2 of Inside the Rookery. Today I'm joined on the panel by fellow Rooks, Andy Law and Andy Leask, and our special guest, who we are so pleased to talk to today, Markeia McCarty, Community Director for Hunters Entertainment. And today we're going to be talking with Markeia about actual play, a deep dive into producing and playing in actual plays. Welcome to the stream, Markeia.
Oh, thank you so much, Lindsay and Andy's, for having me.
That is the correct mode of address for the Andes.
Yeah, so a little bit of my backstory for people out there. I have professionally played in and or produced actual plays for high traffic nerd channels since 2016, I want to say 2016, 2017, of either being talent or producing, or more than likely both, because it's actual plays. And along with that, I first started with Hunters Entertainment as a creative producer, helping them with their Twitch channel with, making shows for Twitch at that time. This was in 2020, the year. I'll just do the T and the Y, you hear it. And for that, we came up with a variety show and then also a number of weekly shows. So we had like 2 to 3 shows a week that we had. And just know that there's a big difference between working with a huge company that has a budget, definitely, but one that you're used to working with, and then working with one where it's like, guess what? You are in control of this budget, and here's how much it is. So yeah, and now I'm about to go into doing home TTRPGs with a few people. So I think I've kind of run the gamut. So I'm more than willing to share some of this wisdom that I've accumulated over the years with working with these different channels.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. As always, we've had questions pre-submitted by our patrons and by our Discord community, but please, to all our viewers, add your comments and extra questions in the chat, and I'll bring them up for Markeia and potentially for the other Rooks as well. As some of you may know, we are particularly interested in grilling Markeia for everything she knows due to an actual play that may or may not be happening and started last night in our very own living room that I'm in today. So let us get into the questions. Where are we? Seagoat asks, so Markeia, what is in your actual play starter set? Where do you begin?
Okay. Yeah, I have a very basic structure that I came up with, and it's worked for me so far. The five main questions that you do with when you're building a story is the same thing that I do for actual plays: who, what, when, where, why, and then also add on to that how. And each of those are split into how. Each of those are split into like a minimum of 2 parts. The one that I always consider to be the most important one to begin with is why. So for this actual play, it's like a 2-parter. Why are you doing this? And no morality judgments here of why it is. It might be, oh, I want to build a community. Oh, I want to find my tribe. It can be like, oh, I want to become famous. This is my way I'm going to become famous. That's fine. Whatever. Why? Because you want to put a team of people behind you that match your motivation. There is nothing more frustrating than having your why be, I want to make a beautiful creative product. And I just want, if it just changes one person's mind about how they view the world, to have that person matched up with, we are the next Critical Role. It's oh, that's a butting head situation that you really don't need to put yourself into. So just be honest with your why, be honest with other people's whys. Also, the second part of that why is, why would people watch this? So let's say that what's a extremely I want to use something other than D&D. Okay, we're gonna make up a game. We're gonna it's a game called Turtle Soup. I don't know if there's a
Turtle Soup. That sounds great.
Everybody loves Turtle Soup. Turtle Soup the game. Let's say is the most popular TTRPG that you can find anywhere. Everyone does it. Everyone loves it. Easy pickup and plug and play. So why are you doing yet another version of Turtle Soup for people to? Is it because it's trending? So it's like, oh yeah, there's a possibility to get audience in there. Is it because you're a co-creator of Turtle Soup? That is a really good reason to do Turtle Soup. But it's also, if you're going to be in these multitudes of lists of everybody else is doing it, why would people watch yours? So why? Big one. So in any case, let's go up to the Who. Who is in the demographic that you're trying to reach? Who is doing this show with you? Two very important things. What is your budget?
and why is it diminishing so fast?
Exactly. How can you stretch it?
Really stretch it.
Yeah. It's like, what is your budget? Also, what is the TTRPG that you're doing? When are you doing this? And by when, I mean, what quarter are you doing this in? Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. For those that don't know, the year is broken up into 4 quarters. The first quarter begins, called Q1, is January, February, March. So there's a certain programming and a certain budget that you have for Q1, which would differ from higher traffic quarters where you would want to pump more budget into it. So when are you putting out this actual play? It makes a difference because people's change it, their taste changes depending. If you're putting, a huge Halloween-esque horror show in the spring, have a good reason for doing that. Me, I love horror year round, but you're going to have a better audience if you try to put that out in Q4 or the latter part of Q3, but really Q4, than you would if you're trying to do that in Q2. Also, where is this in studio? Is this taped ahead of time? Is this live? Is this live event? All of these are very, very different. And then how are how are you doing this? Is this donation based? Like when you're actually doing the TTRPG, is it that you have investors lined up? Are you the investor? Is this personally financed? Is this crowdfunded? How is this happening? So for me, my basic actual play starter set is those questions and me answering that.
Yes, Conquest Publishing says, but who, why, what, where, when answers so many questions. It does, but there's lots of questions to be answered when you're setting up an actual play.
Oh boy.
Seagoat says, I can see Lindsay and Andy Leask actually taking notes. You are right, I am actually taking notes.
For those of you who don't know, we started an actual play just yesterday, and many of the things that were just discussed up there are many of the very questions that we were going through asking. So, why are you a co-creator of the game? Well, yes, I am. Oh, phew. Okay, looks like we've answered the why. Oh. Oh, I was getting worried, but it looks like we're in a good place. So, yeah, we are taking notes somewhat heavily at this side because this is a subject that's very close to our hearts right now.
Cool. Yeah, for people interested out there, I obviously do consulting work as well. So it's like, yeah, everything from diversity, inclusion, marketing, and then also helping steer people in actual plays. So I'm really glad that we're just talking about this to take some of the stigma off of it for people.
Absolutely.
So just in terms of, maybe in terms of where you started, Markeia, your history. So Seagoat's actual play covers audio recordings, video recordings, live streams, choreographed live streams with overlays, maps and music. So where did you start? What was your first actual play you were involved in?
Okay. So for tabletop role-playing games, because like for starting getting into the space, it was professional hosting for AfterBuzz TV is like where I started.
Mhm.
But that had nothing to do with actual plays, but that bridged over into doing things with Geek and Sundry, with Saving Throw Show, for instance. And I'm not certain if Saving Throw Show is still doing stuff now, but they were very big in the small space. I very much enjoyed working with them. But for that, it was me as talent in front of the screen. They had a 2 or 3 camera setup, as in overhead for physical map, and 2 cameras to show for three cameras. They had 1 camera for one side of players, 1 for the other, and then 1 straight on the GM. And very, very basic overlay and graphics for underneath, like very basic. And as the space developed and as more money came in, they then did more with like having digital maps and everything like that. But before that, it was physical. It was very much, we're very impassioned about doing this fun stuff with each other. And I think that's a great place to start. So that's where I began. And they didn't do podcast versions of those shows. I'm not certain if they ever ended up doing that for that particular channel, but for that I was on-screen talent with that one. So did that answer a question of where did I start?
Yeah. And how did you find the difference between sitting, say, on the more production side and then moving over onto the talent side, or vice versa?
Well, okay, so there's a certain amount of stress and brain fog that can happen when you are producing and then you are also creative talent in something. It's like literally having to do a big switching of gears. For instance, for live event producing, if y'all are familiar with Gen Con, last year, last year I produced, I'm sorry, was it a Misfits and Magic? The live event version of it, where we had Bria as GM, and we had a part of our Hunters team, which was Michelle Wynn Bradley, Knox Weiler-Burf, myself, and also Becca Scott. And it was, we were part of the Evil House. It was fabulous, wonderful. The producing side of it is wonderful, working with all of those people and putting things together. But there's also a lot of stressors that happen with producing anything, because you want everyone to have such a great time. You want things to shine through. You want it to look effortless. Yep. And to do that for a sold out crowd, and also know your lane when it comes to producing, as opposed to when you're on the creative side of it. So if y'all had seen me like 10 minutes before the show, where I'm running around, I'm like, hey, do you have what you need? Do you have what you need? Is there something I can do for that? And they're like, Markeia, just get backstage. Get backstage. We got it. We're fine. We're like, okay, just as long as okay, great. You have it. All right. And then going backstage, you'll be like, oh my gosh, I have to get in character now. So yeah, there's a huge difference when it comes with a brain fog with it. So I would recommend to people to stick with one or the other until you're used to doing it, until you can like switch it like that. I would recommend producing more than I would recommend being on camera talent, just for the simple fact that on camera talent is a whole different skill set for everything than producing is. I'm saying there are very equal skill sets. Again, this goes back to the why are you doing this? If it's for you to build a community around your voice and your, then yeah, you want to be in front of in camera or in some way. If your why is that you want to bring Turtle Soup the game to the masses, then producing will help you do a whole lot more of that brain power into the spaces that it needs to go, and a lot of your ego will be removed from it. Just to say the quiet part out loud.
If you're the follow-up to that question from Seagull was, and if you are starting out with your very first actual play, in terms of your studio space, your technical requirements, is it a case of record it on your phone and work upwards from there? Or have you got any advice on those wanting to start actual plays, which would give them a head start on their technical setup?
Okay. Yeah, I know that a lot of people are worried about the buy-in when it comes to actual plays. And it can seem like a lot. It can seem like a hurdle that you're like, oh, well, I might have the time, I might have the friends, I might have the TTRPG that I want, but there's no way I have this money, or there's no way that I have this equipment. So rest assured, if you can do a podcast, like a live video podcast, I'm very confident of the fact that you could also do an actual play with that same equipment. So if with your podcast you are recording that from your phone, I would recommend external mics. For instance, there's a number of technologies that you can do where you plug in like an antenna into your phone, and then you can have multiple wireless mics to be able to record into your phone. I've utilized this a lot for interviews at conventions. And if you're starting out with everything and you're going to record through your phone, I'd recommend doing that. But, maybe having at least 2 webcams set up and have a smaller TTRPG that you're going to be doing, like, let's say, a 2 and U kind of a deal. I know Hyper RPG did a bunch of that before. So at the most 3 people, so you don't have to worry about more than 2 cameras, one on your GM, one on your other 2 players. But I think that would be the bare minimum to be able to do actual play from a technical setup. I would recommend you having a separate producer, like a technical director, because that is going to be a lot of things for you if you're going to be GMing, plus your camera operator, plus your technical director, and then trying to do this quality project, whether it's going to be live or it's going to be taped. If it's going to be taped, which I do recommend because schedules are a thing, how much of we'll fix it in post are you willing to do? Because that phrase is very strong and very loaded, and people don't understand that 10 minutes of something that you just record, you're like, oh, we'll fix it in post. You're looking at 2-3 hours of work of trying to clean up the audio, of trying to get the camera angle right, or do the zoom in, or whatever it is. So, and that's 10 minutes. You're more than likely doing a 3-hour TTRPG.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Turns out there's already a Turtle Soup game.
Oh, no!
Our great RPG idea has been destroyed! All our hopes dashed upon the rocks of disappointment.
Then I legitimately hope I only said good things about Turtle Soup the game. I'm sure that I did. Now I have to wonder if I played it and totally forgot. Like, oh, it's so random.
Yeah, it just bubbled up from your subconscious. So Kilishandra, with a sort of a follow-up to that question, is what should suffer first if you have to make a choice, cameras or sound?
That is a very, very difficult decision. That is very Lady or the Tiger of you. How dare you? Also, excellent question. I would sacrifice cameras before I would sacrifice sound. Definitely, hands down. Because think of podcasts in general. If you are doing a live production or something and somehow, the chaos gremlins appear in front of you and they give you this choice, always sacrifice your cameras. Keep your audio, because think about it. Afterwards, when you fix it in post, you could literally have the character art of each person just come up, and you still have their audio, underneath it. So you can still continue the story and still keep people invested. More than likely, they're going to switch into, podcast mode and not be actually watching, but that's fine, but you fix it in post in that way. But audio is so incredibly important when it comes to this particular medium of gaming.
In terms of inclusion, and if you're doing a live stream actual play, how do you feel about transcripts, closed captions that are generated as you broadcast? Do they work?
Most definitely. And I really do believe that we need to get out of the mindset of that, because that's an accessibility thing that is for everyone. Like, people out there, do not tell me that you do not put your subtitles on when you are watching at home, because you're like, oh, I can't hear the words as well unless I can read them. So Yeah, y'all are sitting there with your HBO Max, your Prime Video, and you have your subtitles on, and you're speaking the language that the subtitles are. It literally is a comprehension thing. People need to realize, audio and visual learners, definitely. I am a visual learner, which is very interesting since a lot of my career has been in podcasting and like audio work and voiceover work and everything. But it helps so much to have the words in front of me when I'm answering a question or anything, which is why I love that y'all did the banners here for me, for everybody in general. So yes, and it's very easy, free. There's a number of different programs that you can use. The easiest one that I've seen that people do is like doing it through Google Meet. Like they'll just open up an incognito tab of Google Meet, have everybody go into there, and then do like video capture, I believe, of having those closed captions in, and then having them appear on the screen, usually in one set as opposed to under each person. So yes, if you can do closed captions, do them. I would recommend putting that a priority underneath your cameras, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
How well, maybe I'll ask that afterwards. Like getting really into the detail. If you've got a really interesting IP that doesn't have like standard everyday words, do the captions generate like really hilarious alternatives?
Oh,
Yes,
they definitely. You should see my name come up in closed caption alone. So I've seen every rendition.
Yeah, we often have captions on Zoom in my day job, and they don't cope with a Scottish accent that well. The things they come up with are quite ridiculous sometimes.
Although that technology is improving like so quickly,
absolutely.
it's already much better.
And so Kilishandra asks, should the cast have set goals for each stream, or is improv and winging it better?
Okay, so another good question. With this, remember when I was talking about the different skill sets, and there's different skill set that you have for on camera, that you have behind camera. Both are equal. Both need to happen to be able to make everything happen. So one of those skill sets for in front of the camera, I would assume with this question that this is not a GM-less game that is being here. At the very least, it has a facilitator involved. The thing that comes to mind for me is like Alice is Missing, where it's like it's GM-less. There's a facilitator that helps steer everything around. For those that don't know, Hunters Entertainment is one of our games. Okay, so as in set goals for each stream, I would like to think that with this crew that is doing this, that with their GM, that they have already gone through the talking of the session 0 of the establishing of characters, of the lines and veils. Anyone that is not familiar with that, it's like literally this far, do not cross it as a line. And then a veil is, oh, that kind of bugs me. So we're just going to blur this out and put this out of frame. It can still be discussed, just not directly in front of me. So lines and veils type of a goal. So as for each stream, let's say that you're doing a short campaign, 4 episodes. Great. I love 4 episode campaigns. You do it in a month, perfect. Retain your audience or whatever. So in those 4 episodes, I can't use Turtle Soup the game anymore. Turtle Sandwich?
Turtle Sandwich seems completely safe. No one would make a game called Turtle Sandwich. Just like they'd never make one called Turtle Soup.
Of course. Can you tell I'm gonna have like lunch like right after this? It won't be turtles though. I swear. It's literally because I have it's because I have my Ninja Turtles cup like right here. And that's why turtle came out of there. Okay, so Turtle Sandwich. Let's say the 4 episode genius that is Turtle Sandwich. Let's say that it's Turtle Sandwich. So with that, let's say the GM tells them, hey, you've got your starting quest. We're gonna start in Turtle Manhattan. And now it's just Ninja Turtles, y'all. It's just turned into Ninja Turtles. But eventually your end goal is that you're going to be fighting not Shredder. Don't say Shredder. Say anything else. You're going to be fighting whatever your BBEG
Slicer to slice the bread,
Slicer,
the
and
turtle
that's
bread.
and
Yeah, for
I'm
the sandwiches.
and that may or may not happen in an alternate dimension and an alternate or a different planet. So it's like, okay, so they know that they have these four episodes. They know like their character journey has to happen within that set amount of time, and that there are going to be some tent poles that are some big things that are going to happen within each episode. So with that in mind, I hope that you have players that are team players and that wouldn't necessarily be, well, this has to be my character's episode. Unless, let's say you have 4 characters and you happen to have 4 episodes, then this is stuff that can work out. So I'm making this a long answer for a reason, because like with me doing the short answer for should the cast have set goals for each stream, or is improv and winging it better? Improv and winging it is fine when you have structure. When you know the structure, you know which rules you can bend and which ones you can break. So being very character-based, but knowing that you have a journey to go on with other people, you can have both, because you have those goals, you have that structure, but you don't want to script everything unless you're doing a TV show style one, which I've seen actual plays do that. So yeah, it depends on the one, but improv and winging it, great with your structure.
That is a fine answer. If I do say so myself, that's a fine answer. Yeah, really like that one.
You do like your structure, Andy.
That's maybe perhaps because I love structure.
Seagoat says Markeia is making a long answer so Lindsay and Andy can make better notes. We didn't get this question. I thought someone might ask this, so I'm going to ask it. And that is, when you're recruiting or when you're setting up your actual play, do you start with a GM and then kind of get players? Do you start with players and then find an appropriate GM? Do people tend to come in groups? Like, how does that work?
Okay, so one of the things that I keep in mind when I'm casting for something actual play wise or helping with casting for something, I consider again the where. Am I casting a live event? Is this SDCC? Is it already a game that we already do? Like for instance, last year for SDCC we did a live version of Outbreak Undead. So of course with that we are going to bring on our cast of Outbreak Undead and then have specialty guests on there, including we had co-creator Ivan Van Norman be one of the characters, because like who wouldn't want to see him die from his own game? Yes. This is the mindset that we do. Yes. So with that, when I'm casting, I first consider going back to my actual play starter set with everything. It's like, where is this going to be? So I already have in mind what the TTRPG is going to be. It's like, where is it? If it's live event, are they going to be there, with the convention and everything? And I will do feelers out with like DMs or checking people's Twitter where they're like, hey, I'm going to be at Gen Con. Be like, oh, great. You're going to be at Gen Con, huh? So what's your schedule look like? Kind of a deal, like soft feels out. So, but taking the spirit of the question and, back to what you were saying with inclusivity and diversity. And then also I take into account different personalities that I do for my casting of things. After I know the game that I want to cast, a good example again is Alice is Missing. We did a live actual play for our Silent Falls campaign for Kickstarter. And thank you everyone that helped make that a success. Love that. So I did an actual play, which I ended up being the facilitator for, and we had Tanya DePass, known as Cypher O'Tier. We had Omega Jones, known as Critical Bard, and then also known as Swole Initiative, but Jay Foster. And the reason why those people were chosen out of so many things, of course, like with scheduling and everything, is we needed to have people that we wanted this to be an impactful and new experience to them. So for this, it was finding people that that were bigger in the space that hadn't had a chance to experience Alice is Missing just yet, but were very interested in doing it. And not only that, but knew about the give and take. That is a very important thing with people that you cast, on camera. They don't have to have humongously huge followings, because actually the conversion for that isn't as big as people think. People will want to throw really big money at a bigger name, and only some of the conversion will come over into your show. So there are better ways to utilize your budget. Now, if that person is someone that, you know each other, or they're like, hey, yeah, I'd love to work with you sometime, give me a schedule, I'll give you the friend rate on everything. Be like, oh, yay, yes, let's come on and bring it. But bringing it back to Alice in This Thing, chose them, and also they chose us to do this, to do that experience with, was because of the depth that it went into it. We wanted people that would go into the mindset of what is basically high school trauma and dealing with all of these trigger issues, and be able to come back from that, but also be able to do that in a presentable, this is the product, this is the show. Remembering, from the producing aspect of why you're doing it, this is the product, this is the show. That is very important. There can be the creative, like, I want everybody to experience what I'm experiencing. Awesome. Different mindset, different skill set. So with that, I also keep inclusivity and diversity in mind, and also being the community director of Hunters Entertainment. And before that, I was like marketing manager, marketing director. And then, like I said, I started off as a creative producer with it. I have always, always, always made inclusion a part of what we present as a company. And the company believes this as well. And you can see that within what we produce and what we put out there. It is a fallacy to buy into the thinking that a certain gender and skin tone or ethnicity is going to be the best for the job, and that anyone outside of that gender or ethnicity is a diversity hire. That's a fallacy to think that way. When you restrict yourself to just a specific mindset, then you block out everything else that can be amazing for you. So I do my best to take my blinders off, with that. And I specifically look for personality types. And that is how I do my inclusion. And that is how I do my diversity casting for things.
And yeah, interesting. And do you think that in the end, presumably that makes a better game? If you have all the same kind of player, then you get quite a dull game, probably.
Contrast.
So it's not just inclusion for inclusion's sake. It's inclusion because inclusion makes a better quality product to watch.
It definitely does. It most definitely does. And not only that, but it, in a little way, I feel like it makes the world a better place. Like, in a little way it does, because what they say, the internet lives forever, right? Everything on the internet lives forever. The things that we record now, someone might see 22 years from now because of an internet hole that they went down. And I would like to think that doing a Kids on Bikes game, where it happens in a small town, that their mascot is a turnip, and just the very fact that there is a little goth kid in there whose idol is Prince and literally believes in color magic. These are real things. Like, that is a character that I did for Kids on Bikes campaign with Roll20. I would just like to think that
to be fair, that also sounds like me when I was 15. So
there you go.
Too.
There you go. Exactly that. Yeah. So it's just being able to find parts of yourself within other people that you've been told that you wouldn't or shouldn't find parts of yourself in.
Yeah.
So it's like,
And I think this industry, the TTRPG industry, it has changed so much in the general public's understanding of it and knowledge of it. So, 5 or 10 years ago, we've got Andy and I have got two children. They're teenagers now, a little bit older, and now it is so cool what Andy and I do for our older daughter at university in a way that people wouldn't even have known when we were at university. It would have been like, what do you mean your parents are in the TTRPG industry? So I think it really, it's popped up in things like what's the show, Andy? Stranger Things, and has had a bit of a resurgence. But also, I think during COVID, the ability and the resilience to rely on your inner self, your imagination, and we've seen that is more valuable than probably it was valued, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Does that resonate with you? I know we talk about the year COVID.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean 3 years. Yeah, that's just
really.
like the beginning year.
Yeah.
The beginning
it's still
year.
going on. I mean, that's a conversation. But yes, no, it does resonate with me for the simple fact that a lot of us had to go into this big reflective phase of it's like, okay, a lot of the things that I'm not going to say distracted ourselves, but let's say filled our lives. A lot of things that filled our lives were all of a sudden gone. It was just cut off. It was gone. So it's like, what is left? Who am I? I need to go on this self-exploration journey. I need to connect, but I'm at home. So a lot of that connects happens through the internet. A lot of that connect happened through exploding Twitch channels, TikToks, a lot of that happened to that wanting to find connection. That wanting to be like, okay, who am I now? I didn't realize I needed to find myself again. I thought that was over. It's like, no, you are constantly finding yourself. That is the great journey. So yeah, no, that very much resonates, Lindsay, because we all have to go through that journey. We're all going through that journey. That is a generational traumatic event that we are all a part of right now. So that doesn't just go away. That continues making new normals.
I certainly, as a role-playing teenager, worked through a lot of my trauma through my characters. I would highly recommend that. Maybe your GM might disagree, but it is what it is.
Well, that's where lines and veils come in.
Yeah, exactly,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah, Seagoat says, if I told someone years ago I played TTRPGs, they would be incredulous. You play that thing. Nowadays, it's like, oh, cool, like CR, Stranger Things, etc. Yeah, it's very, very different, I think.
It's not just, it's enormously different. If I consider, say, for example, because I've been doing this for far too long, but if I consider, say, in the 90s saying, I do this, everyone would have said, you do what? So you always had to veil it as something else so that they can try and access the information that you were attempting to convey to them. In the noughties, it was much more, it's D&D, but because I was often working on other games. And there was enough of a social awareness that, D&D, that's that thing I think I have heard of, perhaps. It's a game, isn't it? But at least it was an entry point in, where nowadays, you can say the words D&D and pretty much everybody knows what that is. They might not know what role-playing is, but they know what D&D is. And so many people who previously weren't exposed are now even playing it.
The biggest change for me is when I talk about it at work or I talk about it with my friends, they say, oh, my kids are totally into that. They'll be really interested. Like, what's your husband's name? Show me some of his work. What do they do? Can you give me any tips? I really want to help my kids get into this because I see the benefit of it. Whereas when I was getting into it, my parents did not necessarily see the benefit of it.
Satanic panics.
That's some real talk right there.
Yeah. So I was. Oh, sorry. On you go.
Oh no, I was TTRPGs and video games and wrestling, but TTRPGs and video games. My parents were like, "You're not ever going to use video games or things. I mean, you can don't let it interfere with the studies." And like thinking now, if y'all had just let me play video games, you don't even understand.
Yeah,
true. I mean, our eldest daughter goes to a local university studying games design, for exactly that reason. Brought up right.
But the difference is now when we tell people that, they're like, oh, that's so cool. Oh, I wish that had been available when I was at university because that's what I would have wanted to do, which I think is
We're
interesting.
Lucky
right.
Oh no,
Yeah.
I'm just going to say we're lucky because we've got Rockstar here, so they do an awful lot of development down into the local university population as well, and they work along with them. So that's really cool. Anyway, that's
Right.
slightly beside the point.
Let's get back to actual
Tangential.
plays. Yeah, tangential, the meaning of TTRPG in the modern life. Kelishandra asks, one-offs, short campaigns, she says maybe 6 sessions, but you'd said 4, or critical role marathons.
Okay. Well, it all depends on well, your budget. That would be a big one. And then also who you have already in cast, like with scheduling wise and everything. One-offs are always the easiest to do. They're also the ones that you can do the biggest spectacle with, or the biggest tent pole with, because it can be like, yeah, turtle sandwich in space. And it's like, yeah. Totally do that. So for that one-off, you can have a lot of character relation that happens, like, oh, I relate to this character, it's great. Oh, the cliffhanger, and that's fine because it's a one-off, whatever. Have your fun with it. Have the fun with the campaign. Have the fun with those people. It's almost like a tester out to be like, oh, how do I work with these people? What's their personality match? What's their work ethic? Cool, that one-off. Cool, good, done. Beautiful. And I can like connect and clip to that, and everything's good. So short campaigns, you would like to think that you've worked with these people before, or you at least hear really good things about them, like with industry. And note, I say industry, not community. When you are producing actual plays that you are doing live and you are paying money into, or you are expecting to recuperate costs from, or you are paying your players, that's when you go into industry as opposed to community. That's a whole other conversation as well. So yeah, with the short campaign, I love those because you can explore the characters anymore. You have time to breathe. Not everything has to be this hectic thing that happens within 2 to 3 hours. So that you have so short campaigns, 6 sessions, you're like looking at what, 12 hours maybe with that. So yeah, that's a TV show. That's like a Netflix TV show where you know that you have those episodes. You can do a big tentpole thing. You can have a hot springs episode where it's like literally everybody's just shopping, or everybody's just like getting together and having flashbacks happen. You can have your full action-packed one. So yeah, there's a lot to be said for short campaigns. Okay. I love that you said critical role marathons as opposed to just marathons in general. But no, totally get it. So yeah, with the open-ended campaigns like that, where it's literally where the characters go, where the lands take you, these character relationships put in different situations where you can have this investment that happens because you are able to see so much of yourself and these characters that you can literally get upset when they make the decisions that you would make in the situation. You're like, don't make that mistake again. Those are wonderful and good and great. Those like I heartily believe with those that's if producing an actual play is a passion project, that is a passion project within a passion project, because for that you have to have so much empathy for what is going on in those other people's lives. I don't know if the people that you are doing this open-ended campaign with are people that you know in real life. More often than not, it's that the GM knows these people and have brought these people together for a campaign that they want to do. So it's like being in a work environment, but you've all made the conscious decision that it's like, we work here. This is our, let's say, our leader. I'm not going to say our boss, like with the GM, but we've chosen to be in this space with each other for this indeterminate amount of time. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're friends. And, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to socialize with that person outside of the games. It doesn't mean that you have to be best friends with everybody that's there. It's wonderful when that does happen, but people are people and separate, entities. The open-ended campaigns are gorgeous and beautiful because you can explore the minutia, you can explore the universe, you can explore every little bit of everything with that because you have no time limit. And that's gorgeous and wonderful. Putting that as an actual play in a stream, though, budget-wise, that is the one that I do not recommend unless everyone is doing it for free. And then that can get very grating after a certain amount of time. And you will have scheduling issues because people have to work. Why? To pay to be able to be in this open-ended actual play. So out of those, if you are producing an actual play and you've moved from the one-offs, do the short campaigns. You can always do different cast members, or you can like take your cast and do different TTRPGs in, which is the popular method of doing everything. The most open-ended campaign that I have been a part of, and this was the beautiful thing that happened. Outbreak Undead. We started it like 2021, and there's like, I don't know, 100 episodes of just like in the first season. And after that, we've transitioned to different channels with our cast, continuing the story in different ways. And we're legit friends in life. And like for instance, Luis Crazzo, I hadn't known him in real life, I think, but when we connect on Outbreak Undead, it's like, we know each other, right? It's like, yeah, we know each other. And it's like, that's one of my buds now, dude. So it's like, yeah, it's beautiful when open-ended campaigns happen like that. But starting out, like if this is asking which one should I do for my first year of actual plays, do one-offs. Do one short campaign, maybe twice, like choose your quarters. More than likely you'll want to do Q2 and Q4 for your short campaigns with those sessions, but otherwise do one-offs. Leave the Critical Role marathons to the passion within a passion within a passion project.
Idiots.
The whole way through that, all I could hear is, you've made this really hard on yourselves. You've made this really hard on yourselves.
The interesting thing, though, about our group, Markeia, is that before we even went live, just your point about people that you know. So some of the people, well, obviously I'm married to Andy, and I've known the other Andy. We've all three of us known each other, too many years, 26, 27, a long time.
Almost 30, yeah.
Yeah, almost 30 years. We've been a little trio. But we recruited other players, but we recruited them a year ago, and we've been playing and gathering and at one of our players' Kath's house to begin with, then our house when our studio was set up. So that's how long we've had to form that bond and to get ready for the actual play. And I think that's been hugely important. And I completely I recognize what you're saying, that if Andy, our GM, had wanted to start and go live immediately, you absolutely would have wanted to practice with some one-offs, with some short campaigns, and then go into your epic campaign, which in Andy's case is is his take on the Enemy Within, and on a game and a campaign that he's played. How many times, Andy? Now you've
About
GM'd that
25 to 30 or something.
Yeah.
I suppose that's the other thing. It is a long marathon campaign, but it's not technically open-ended. I mean, it could be. You could make it open-ended, but there is a clear narrative. There are the different books that you're working through.
It's a little bit like, say, Master Nyarlathotep for, say, Call of Cthulhu, which is a very famous, long campaign, but it's definitely got a beginning, a middle, and an end that's very clear, with predefined posts along the way to ensure that everybody understands exactly where they are and also where they're going. Because for someone on open-ended campaigns, you just get that feeling of, wow, where am I going? Which can come if you're just playing in a game. And if you're doing it online, that's not a good sensation or feeling to have, because then you start doubting whether you even want to be doing it in the first place.
Yeah.
And that can be an impact if you feel guilted into staying.
What's been really interesting about this discussion for me, from our other hats in Rookery Publications, where we create TTRPG material, what's been really interesting for me is to reflect on what makes good content for GMs and for those source books we create for actual play, in contrast to what might make good material if you're not if you're not showing that and it's not actual play. So that's something for a whole other discussion for creators of TTRPGs. But do you have any thoughts, Markeia, on what you particularly like to see when, if you pick up a supplement that is an adventure that wasn't designed for actual play, but you're using it for actual play? What pops and what would attract actual play people to our products?
Oh yeah, definitely. There's definitely something to be said. Home game versus live game. With anything. I know I'm going to keep on bringing it back to Hunters because it's just easiest. With Outbreak Undead is a very crunchy system. It is very crunchy. For what we have presented online, that has been more streamlined and for people because more pick up and play, more easy. It's literally the game, just we're not showing how you make the sausage with everything. We don't have to do that for, the actual show. So, and we're actually coming up with a showing that streamlined version for people to be able to utilize for other people that want to do actual plays for it, as opposed to, but if you want to get into the crunch with it, we got you for that as well. So, but what you're the second part of that, Lindsay, with what you're saying with like what pops for supplements that aren't necessarily actual plays, but then it's like, oh, hey, I really enjoy this. I'm going to pair it with a system that I know and run with it. Locations are a big thing. More detailed location, the best possible. Being able to envision myself or my players playing in this world, within this supplement. If there's a very short adventure or a very noticeable and like landmark NPC that has this gorgeous detailed backstory behind them, I would want to take them and put them into a world. So it's literally, you don't have to build an entire system to have somebody want to do an actual play of it. I mean, think about it. Like if somebody, do y'all know the Xanath series?
No.
Do you know Terry Pratchett?
Yes.
The author. Okay, let's say that you saw an actual play where it's like we're doing Terry Pratchett, the TTRPG, and they might use I'll do Hunters. So they're using the kids on bikes because it's such an easy system to do. And they're like, yeah, but we're doing it set in Terry Pratchett's world. It's like, you know what that looks like already, like in your head as Terry Pratchett fans. You're like, I want to see this. I want death to show up, and I want all capital letters, in their closed captions. And I want to go along with this adventure. So, but literally, that's not an actual play. That's this beautiful world, location, and characters that can then be transposed. Or like Skyrim, for instance. You have companies that have made Skyrim. Like I'm in one right now. Omega Jones, Critical Bard, is doing a Skyrim campaign. So it's like we did a one-off. It's beautiful. Go ahead and watch it. It's called It's called Hear Our Story, but in Skyrim, it's like who's woo wah or this.
Love it.
Yeah, but it's called Hear Our Story. You can find it on Omega or like on Twitter for it. But it's literally this game that we've all played with. We love. We know the in and outs of, and Jesse Jerdak is the GM for it, and we're characters, and it's just wonderful, and it's loving, it's fulfilling. So yeah, location and world first and foremost.
Putting it all together, I was going, when I was looking through the campaign, which I have been doing obviously for when we present, and the bits that struck me most were almost classical RPG design moments, memorable moments. Those parts that when you're forming a campaign and you're trying to create something that other GMs can present, it's those key scenes that you just go, oh wow, that's great. A story beat that completely changes everything, or an environment, as you mentioned, the locations that when the PCs move through it completely changes their memories of that whole campaign. The bit they look back on and go, do you remember when? Do you remember when? And trying to find those do you remember whens inside the campaign. So loosely speaking, if I was going to drop that down to a single one, it'd be like the set piece, that you can immediately pick up drop and be pretty sure that no matter how the different characters tackle it, you're going to end up with something that everybody goes, wow, that was awesome, at the end of it. That was one thing I was particularly looking for, because I'm sort of rejigging the campaign as I work through the very established one and looking at trying to pick out those key scenes, those parts that not only identify it as that campaign, but will also create in the long terms the most obvious key scenes happening in Rooks. Yeah, that.
Shame on you, Seagoat. Shame on you.
How dare you? Well done.
So yeah, that's one that I found, and I found myself almost refining the process that I do when I write campaigns. Because when you write campaigns, you're trying to build all the bridges between those key scenes, those those memorable moments you're trying to create at the table. Mm-hmm. And I found myself shortening bridges as I was trying to figure out what would make for the best. And I was reading through established material. I was like, yeah, these bridges don't need to be as long. All these beats in between do not need to be there. A lot of these are because perhaps the writer at hand liked this certain thing, so focused a certain amount of time on it, without actually thinking about the fact that they're presenting an adventure to be presented by someone else. They're not writing a story. And that's often forgotten by some campaign writers, that they're not actually writing a story. They're writing a piece of material to inspire you to tell stories. And that has been, for me, when I was going through it, a bit of an eye-opening point, not just from the perspective of trying to figure out what will make the best material and which ones will we use and which ones will inevitably flump when we get there. It's not that. It was, for me, very much an eye-opening part for I perhaps wanting to rejig how I'm creating adventures to ensure that I can allow for those bridges, but I don't need to be telling you about those bridges, and I've maybe done things that I change later. Mm-hmm. And one last thing, humor. Where's the funny bits? Because they're automatically engaging and entertaining. And even in the darkest, grimmest, most horrible setting, that humor stands as a wonderful counterpoint to that darkness. To ensure that that darkness is nailed, you need to have the light that's shining on from above. And the humor is a wonderful light that everyone universally gets. So, yeah, I was interested because your answer, I was like, oh, yeah, I wasn't thinking of that. Huh. Which is really good.
We've probably got time for maybe one more question. So this is more about the practicalities of when you're in actual play. Kervin has asked, what are the best tips for getting players to not talk over each other and stay engaged when others have a spotlight? And obviously, if you're working with professionals who are being paid, you would expect them to do that because that's their job, right? But if you're not and they're less experienced, how would you do that?
Yeah, asking for no particular reason.
It wasn't us that asked. It was Kervin that
asked. Yes, definitely. Okay, so there are a number of different ways that you can have less experienced players start to realize, when that give and take has to happen. You can give them clips to more professionally produced shows, and you can literally see where, if there's a pause where people just kind of breathe and they breathe into their character, and then you will see one person, it's like a group mind thing, and you'll see one person then step up and start talking, and everybody like gives the floor to them or starts connecting with them in the scene. That's something that comes with experience, and obviously like being professionally paid for things, getting to a certain level of that skill set that is performance, that is talent, that is in front of camera type of a thing. Let's say that you have, like you said, less experienced players. There are improv games that you can do with them. You obviously off camera, just to get them. One of them is called Cocktail, for instance, where you would have, let's say you have 5 players. This includes the GM, and you do 3 in one and then 2 for the other, and you give the players that are the duo a subject, like anything's like, oh, Rocky Road ice cream is neither rocky nor made of roads, discuss, kind of a deal, and then that's for them. Then the other 3 can be like, hey, I want you to talk about different CPR methods that you learned via TV that don't work in real life. So then that's your conversation. So you can have them talking, and they're at the same volume, and then you're like, okay, great. And then you're going to point to the duo, and that's for the three. They then have to talk quieter. And then they're just like basically just doing murmuring while they're listening to what the duo is saying. And the duo talks louder and louder and starts making their specific points. They come to a conclusion, and then everybody goes back up to the same volume again. So you can keep on doing this. It's a short form improv game called Cocktail. There's a number of improv games that you can do for listening points, where it's like that give and take.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if it gets really bad, a tip that you can utilize is you can mute people. So if you're a GM of something, you can establish this as just, hey, this is how we, work things for this particular campaign or for this particular episode, where it's like, once your character has come to, their point, I'm going to mute you, or you can mute yourself, kind of a deal. And, then I will talk, and I will unmute the next character that I want to go in. That is a extreme case, though. You shouldn't have to, you necessarily shouldn't have someone in front of camera who doesn't understand the give and take to the point where you have to do the extreme case of muting them. Yep. So, but tips with that, short form games, literally during session 0, establishing there's a lot of things that we just, as humans, we get when people do them. We learn through their actions. So during your session 0, if your GM takes a big old backseat and just everybody's talking over each other, that's going to translate over into the campaign. If you are the GM, you need to take that front step forward and be like, oh, great. Okay, great. Andy Law, I really love what you are doing with your your gnome character.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Hello.
Give us some of your backstory, and in particular, I believe that other Andy L. The names disappeared, so I don't know your last name.
You're in trouble.
Yeah, like other Andy L. If you Leask. Like Andy Leask, love the barbarian character. Let's have an interaction with the both of you. And Lindsay, we're going to go to you after we have this interaction with them. And then it's like, okay, great. They built their relationship. You can even time yourself, be like, oh, okay, I gave them like 5-6 minutes. Okay, great. And see if they'll do like the natural tapering off. That natural tapering off, be like, excellent. Lindsay, we're doing a different scene with you. So yeah, there are ways to establish it through your actions without having to necessarily mute someone, but that mute option is there if you need to, and it's live, and you don't want to try to fix over talking in post.
And I'm delighted you didn't suggest like an electroshock collar or something like that.
Oh my god. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Markeia. That actually brings us to the end of our hour. Thank you to the Andys as well, of course, for being on the panel with me. That was so interesting, and we did actually take notes. So thank you to you. Thank you, as always, to all our patrons who make Inside the Rookery possible, and our Rookery Publications Discord members, and really the whole community. Next week, we will be talking to the lore master of Sotek, who will be talking about turning your passion into a grim and perilous career. So until then, thank you, Markeia. It's lovely to meet you.
Yes, thank you, all of you. This is a lovely conversation. I hope it helps. I hope it helped people.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Thank you, as I said, to our patrons. Please do like, subscribe, and do all those other things. And until next week, all that remains to say is goodbye and cuckoo!